In this Science Stories project, inspired by SSHRC, Storytellers Program, I will communicate the psycholinguistic concept of the garden path model, and I hope to engage you by using a beloved story that I loved when I grew up, The Wizard of Oz. Every single day, we are trying to comprehend sentences that we hear and read. We listen and talk to our parents, our teachers, our friends, and maybe even sometimes our pets. The world is a place full of all sorts of information that we are constantly reading and ultimately trying to understand. When it comes to sentence comprehension, which means to be able to understand and perceive the sentence and its meaning, we are constantly trying to arrive at a parse. A parse in linguistics, which by the way is the scientific study of language, is a representation that we have in our mind of how sentences or phrases are organized. It is important to note that all of this is done in real time, as they would say in the linguistic world. This means that you start making decisions about the sentence before you have the full information about the sentence. The sentence begins to unfold and you get a little bit of information at a time. This brings us to the garden path model, which is a serial, no, not that kind of serial, this kind of serial, and modular processing system that has 2 stages. Serial means that one possibility is analyzed at a time, which means one word at a time, and it is modular because it is happening in 2 stages and is separate from other sources of information. Garden path refers to the saying to be led down the garden path, meaning to be misled. As a person reads a sentence, the reader builds up a structure of meaning one word at a time. At some point, it becomes clear to the reader that the next word or phrase cannot be incorporated into the structure built up thus far. You chose the wrong parse. Your mind led you down the garden path, which led you to misanalyze. Misanalysis and consequent need for reanalysis is the risk for having a serial parser. In stage 1, you analyze a single candidate at a time for the sentence and make a decision each time you get a new word, and that decision you make is made entirely on syntactic information. When we talk about syntactic information, we mean the arrangement of words and phrases that create grammatical sentences in a language, aka the syntax. The theory states if you're at an ambiguous point, which means it could have more than one meaning, you have to make a decision, and you have 2 ways to go: minimal attachment and late closure. Minimal attachment states whatever option has the smallest number of nodes is the one we would choose. This fancy lingo that linguists use to explain sentences just basically means that whatever sentence is more simple and less complex, the model predicts we go for that one. Late closure, on the other hand, states that neither option is more minimal than the other. This is the second syntactic principle. This idea states that you analyze a sentence and you have to decide whether to end that sentence and start a new one, or to keep that one you are working on open longer and close it late, which is what we do prefer to do. In stage 2, this is where more reanalysis occurs, of non-syntactic info, which contributes to the reanalysis. The sound, meaning, visuals, all come into play here. We can compare all of this information to the story of the Wizard of Oz. Dorothy is torn from her world in Kansas by a tornado and ends up in an unfamiliar, colorful place called Oz. All she wants to do is go home. This is her ultimate goal. When we are reading and interpreting sentences, our ultimate goal is to understand and comprehend the meaning of the sentence. Dorothy is told to follow the yellow brick road to Emerald City, where the Wizard of Oz might be able to help her get back home. Just as Dorothy must follow the yellow brick road, you must follow the natural order of the sentence and interpret one possibility at a time. Dorothy meets and befriends the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion. The friends she meets along the way can be compared to the words in a sentence. The characters help her along the way and add to her experience along the yellow brick road, just as each word within a sentence adds to the interpretation of the sentence. At one point in the story, Dorothy comes to a fork in the road where she has the option of 2 roads to take on the yellow brick road. In comparison to the garden path model, we could compare these 2 roads to minimal attachment and late closure. Whatever way looks like the shortcut to Dorothy she would want to take, as it would get her to the wizard quicker. In comparison, the model proposes the idea of minimal attachment, which is that we go for the simplest sentence. If Dorothy and her friends are headed down the road and come to an L in the road, where they can either keep going straight or turn right, they are more likely to keep going straight in the direction the road they were on was taking them, than to turn onto a whole new road. This is in relation to late closure. When parsing your sentence, you are more likely to add to that sentence than to end it and start a new one. After some danger, they meet the wizard, who agrees to grant their wishes, but not until they bring him the broomstick of the Witch of the West. Dorothy was misled to the castle where the wizard was supposed to get her home, but he refuses. She was garden pathed, so she must now reanalyze how she will get home. When we are led down the garden path and interpret the sentence wrong, we must go back and also reanalyze. This is best illustrated with an example. Here is a sentence. The Wicked Witch of the West confessed her sins harmed many munchkins. Here, minimal attachment leads the reader to accept the structure containing the fewest nodes. I know I keep saying this, but to clear this up, it basically means the least complex sentence, the one that is the most simple and straightforward. When you read this sentence, the Wicked Witch of the West confessed her sins, harmed many munchkins, the first interpretation is that her sins are the object of confessed, when in fact, it is the subject of the clause, or phrase, that follows, harmed many munchkins. You initially go with the first interpretation until you reach harmed, which causes you to go back and reanalyze what you have just read. Dorothy was informed that going to the wizard would help her get home, but now she was misled and she must reanalyze how she will get home. Next in the story, after some dangerous events occur, Dorothy accidentally melts the witch with a bucket of water as she puts out the fire on the scarecrow. The guards unexpectedly rejoice now that the witch is dead and give Dorothy the charred broomstick in gratitude. Glinda soon arrives and tells Dorothy she can still return home by clapping her heels together 3 times and repeating, "There is no place like home." This here is where Dorothy finally understands how to get home. This is her disambiguating information. This is where we would get the information in the sentence that disambiguates the direction the sentence is headed in. This means that it would remove any uncertainty you had about the meaning of the sentence. In stage 2 of our model, more reanalysis is done and we consider other information that we had not considered in stage 1, such as intonation, which has to do with how the individual is speaking in relation to the sound of their voice, the semantics, which is the meaning of the sentence, and of course our visual context, because what you see in front of you affects your parsing decisions. So that includes grammar and things like that. Finally, in the end, Dorothy returns home to her family, with the farmhands and Marvel by her bedside. This would be the end of the sentence, where everything is understood and interpreted correctly. The end.